Hello, everybody. We're going to be finishing, as we spoke about in class, Chapter 14, the digestive system. As because of missing the class on Monday. And for the most part, if you recall, when we met this week, we covered almost everything up to in terms of identifying some of the major organs and their functions up until the slide figure 1412, the large intestine. Okay, so we covered that previously in class this week. So unfortunately, because of the timing of things, we're going to finish chapter 21 from this slide onward, excuse me, chapter 14 from this slide onward by you guys watching this broadcast. So well, this is a non-major class, and we don't spend a whole lot of time on nutrition. At least you can get an idea of some basics in nutrition, and then if you wanted to pursue a little bit more knowledge on nutrition, you could certainly take our course Bio 117, which is a nutrition course for non-majors, and you would really look at nutrition in depth in terms of that. So if you've ever seen this website, which I'm going to take you to here in a second, called choosemyplate.gov. This kind of replaces a long time ago the food pyramid that maybe many of you have or haven't seen before. And it looks at what types of foods that a person should get in their diet, and as well as gives them plenty of options to analyze your diet, to look at types of foods I would need, etc. They're general recommendations. They can be customized per individual people. There are some controversies that you can see here. Amount of dairy products may be too high, the amount of red meats may be too high. But when you look at, let me go to the website so you can get a quick peek at what it looks like. Well, it might be. I think. Okay. Let me get off this website, and we'll go to choose my plate.org. And so this is the website you saw on my PowerPoint notes. And my computer's a little slow, so let's hope for the best. We'll go back to this slide just in case, and then I'll give it a couple minutes, a couple seconds to load up. What you're going to see in this website, hopefully, is some of the options that are available to you, and that maybe you decide to use something like this. Like we said, a lot of the learning pieces to this class would be to utilize, things that you've learned in class to help you in your everyday life. So let's see if it's come up. There it is. Okay, so let's log off this. You can see there's a lot of different things that you can look at in terms of explaining what my plate is, looking at what you should be eating in the fruit group, tips on how to help you to eat that, certain amounts of fruits, vegetables, grains, proteins, dairy, and then also talking about things that you might not want to look at in terms of the types of oils and saturated fats and unsaturated fats and things like that. There's a ton of information here. And obviously, we're not going to look at it all, but I do want to point out, like, for example, the Super Tracker, which is, you can see here scrolling. You can plan, analyze, and track your food, exercise, and as well as body weight, which is pretty cool. So this is kind of some of the customizable things that you can do. You can see weight management, calories, etc. here. What kind of audience are we? Students, adults, professionals, etc. Multiple languages. There's a lot of interactive tools that you can do here in terms of cooking and pregnancy and daily food plans, and a body mass index calculator to see if you're healthy. In terms of your weight, there's just a ton of things that you can use on this. And so hopefully you'll decide to check it out on your own, after this class ends, and something that you can certainly look at in terms of helping you in your nutrition, because we don't talk too much about it. Now, obviously, nutrition-wise, the food that we eat, we did talk about the different types of biomolecules that we can eat: carbohydrates, lipids, and then these would be proteins. Amino acids make up our proteins. And our food that we eat obviously is used in terms of carbohydrates and lipids. We can store excess calories in the form of carbohydrates and lipids. We use them for energy, ATP, right? We use them to build cells and maybe specialized compounds like our hormones or our neurotransmitters. So these are some select some examples of why and how we'd use our food. And in terms of proteins and amino acids, you can see some of the functions here in terms of that, and obviously components that we would excrete. Now, carbohydrates are major energy sources we talked about several months ago. Lipids we can also use for energy, but we use them to help build our cell membrane. Remember the phospholipids, and also can use to make ATP. Proteins have multiple effects, as we talked about earlier on in the semester. We build our proteins with 20 recognizable amino acids that we need, some that we get from our diet and some that we don't, that our body can make for us. While we won't be going into vitamins and minerals, they're important. And your book does provide you a little bit more information on these two pieces, as well as fiber. But again, this isn't a nutrition class, it's just an introduction to it. And if you wanted a little bit more in-depth coverage, you certainly could take Bio 117. And so here's some good sources of natural carbohydrates, some of the things that you might be eating. The simple carbohydrates tend to be more fruit-based, obviously, and the complex carbohydrates that are starches and our grains. And again, your book would probably, if you looked a little further, you'd see a little bit more additional information on these. Now, our lipids, we learned about early on that we needed them to build our cell membrane, the phospholipids, remember those? And we also can use them to make ATP. Well, we have two types of fats, the saturated fats, which we associate with our animal products, which you can see here, including dairy and meat. If my pen decides to work today, which I say it's not going to, there it goes. Get a pen here. There we go. So this is my animal stuff, particularly meat and dairy. Right? This tends to be the more bad type of fat that we consume, that you'd find in animal fats or dairy products, butter or something like that. Unfortunately, because of that, why is it bad? It tends to raise what we call our LDLs, or our bad cholesterol, that can clog and somewhat limit blood movement in some of our blood vessels, and especially if that's the heart, then we're talking about heart attacks. So when you look at your blood work and you look at your cholesterol levels, you're worried about the bad cholesterol. You don't want that to be high. And if you eat a diet high in saturated fats, because you eat a lot of meat and dairy products, especially animal types of products, this can raise that bad cholesterol, and this can increase your tendency to develop heart disease, heart attack, stroke, that type of thing. So obviously we want to try to have a diet that limits the amount of saturated fat that's in our diet. Probably less than 10% of our total calories should be related to saturated fats. Now, our unsaturated fats tend to come from plant sources. Most of you would be familiar with olive oils, or a lot of our oils that we use. Some certain cold water fish, maybe a salmon or something like that, we could eat to get some of these unsaturated fats. These tend to, when used in moderation, lower LDL cholesterol and reduce our risk of heart disease. Now, obviously, you have to use them in moderation, because some of these oils can tend to have a tendency to be high in calories, which we can then store excess amounts of fat in our body, which isn't good either in terms of that. So something to look for. Now, saturated and unsaturated. Then you've also heard about trans fats. These are man-made fats. We produce these, and basically what we do is, this word hydrogenation means add hydrogen ions to our vegetable oils. So we might see an oily product, but if we man-made add additional hydrogen ions to these vegetable oils, we produce something called a trans fat. And we tend to see these types of products that have a lot of trans fats in them. They tend to be products like baked goods, cakes, products that need to extend shelf life for marketing purposes. They're not the most healthiest of fats, obviously. We don't want to have trans fats in our diet. Many organizations, companies, and restaurants have reduced their production of trans fats. Why they were there in the first place was to maximize shelf life, to extend shelf life, to make more money for these companies. But unfortunately, when I start adding hydrogen ions to vegetable oils to help extend the life of certain products, foods, etc., and I eat a lot of these trans fats, that can raise my LDL cholesterol, which is not good in terms of that. So anything you see that's hydrogenated, the word hydrogenated, partially hydrogenated or hydrogenated, that means that it was man-made, actually adding these special hydrogen ions to some of these vegetable oils in an attempt to create a product that has a longer shelf life or can last longer. Now, with proteins, there are 20 different amino acids that we can recognize to build these proteins. 12 of them can be made by the human body. That means I don't have to eat these. But these guys, 8 of them are essential, and I must eat them in my food. So if I'm a vegetarian and I don't eat a lot of animal products, which a lot of our animal products do contain proteins, but certainly, as you'll see here in a second, when we look at proteins, you can get proteins in other plant-based sources, but you have to really think about to make sure that you're getting the 8 essential amino acids that we need, because amino acids help me to build proteins. And while my body can make 12 of them to help build these essential proteins that I need for a lot of different processes in my body to transport things across cell membranes, I need proteins. Proteins are hormones. Obviously, a lot of our muscle that we talk about in our body has proteins in it. So we need these amino acids to build these proteins, 8 of which I need to eat in foods and 12 of which can be made by my body. If you're a complete protein, which most animal proteins are, that's why you don't have to worry about it, you contain all 20 amino acids. And if you're a plant-based protein called soy protein, you do also. So a vegetarian needs to really think about these types of foods that they're ingesting, because if they're ingesting incomplete proteins, which lack one or more of the essential amino acids, many plant proteins do, a vegetarian needs to start thinking about how I can either eat more complete proteins or combine some of these incomplete proteins together so that I'm not missing out. You can see these terms here: tryptophan, methionine, lysine. These are examples of amino acids. So I'm not missing out on particular amino acids, and then I can't build the proteins I need to survive. Now, certainly you're not going to remember all these on the list, but this is more for some of you if you're thinking about becoming a vegetarian, or if you knew a vegetarian, what types of things to eat to help make sure that they're getting these 8 essential amino acids. All right. Now, these next couple slides are more for you guys in the future if you want to refer back to your textbook. We kind of recognize 13 different vitamins that are essential for us to survive. Table 14.4 in your book can show you all the vitamins needed in your body. There's 2 groups: those in which you can store, fat soluble, and those in which we don't store. How I call water soluble vitamins is we pee them out. They're stored very briefly, and then eventually they get either urinated out or broke down and get out of our body in eventually in another way. In terms of that, they have to be, because of that, they have to be consumed on a regular basis. Where fat soluble, because we can store some of them as long as we're eating a proper diet, we usually have enough. We don't have to worry about getting it on a daily basis. But in some cases, vitamin supplements may need to be given for dietary needs if I wasn't eating properly. There are 21 essential minerals. Again, see table 14.5 in your book. You're not going to have to recognize, again, all of these vitamins or minerals by any means. There are more for you to be able to see what you may need in your diet. Now, you can see these are essential, and many of the roles that you see for essential minerals come from some of our electrolytes, needing them, ions and blood plasma in the cell cytoplasm, our bone structure, calcium and phosphorus, and, for example, needing sodium, potassium, and calcium for nerve and muscle cell activity, many of which things we have talked about this semester. So minerals tend to be needed in lower amounts, but you can check out table 14.5 in your book and check out the most major minerals that you'd see in your body if you were curious. Not because you need to know them for me, but just for curiosity out of your sake. And then finally, remember, we just looked at, here's the things that we need to survive: carbohydrates, eating them; lipids, eating them; proteins, vitamins, minerals, and then fiber tops the list. Fiber, many of us would probably recognize as things that can, foods that can benefit another word for the colon is large intestine. And these items coming from our vegetables, our fruits, and our grains are important in adding bulk to our large intestine. They tend to be indigestible material, so that's going to give us bulk to our feces, which is our poop. If you want a more not so great name for it, but feces would be eliminating our undigestible material or poop from the large, obviously from the large intestine, eventually to outside of our body. And this can protect us, fiber benefiting the colon, because what we're worried about is colon cancer. And the more fiber you can have in your diet, that can lower the risk for colon cancer, as well as fiber has other benefits in our body. In terms of if you had a low fiber diet, you have trouble going to the bathroom, constipation, you have hemorrhoids, which are blood vessels that can cause issues in the anal region, which we call the anus, as where my large intestine eventually makes its way out of the body. Diverticulosis are actual pockets in the large intestine that can get infected and cause an infection called diverticulitis, which is an infection of those pockets, which can be very serious. So having a high fiber diet can prevent some of these issues, as well as preventing you from getting colon cancer. So a low fiber diet, you're going to see these types of things happening more so for you. Constipated, having hemorrhoids, and diverticulosis or itis, and having a higher risk of colon cancer based on that. Okay. So one of the common things that usually is asked during this class then, when you talk about nutrition, then is, well, how do I maintain my weight? I don't want to gain weight, I don't want to lose weight, maybe, but I just want to maintain weight. Some of you may say to yourself, well, I want to lose weight. I'm overweight, I want to lose weight. And some of you may even say to yourself, well, I want to gain weight. I'm on the skinnier side and I want to gain weight. So when we think about weight control, we think about what we eat, energy consumed, versus what we spend. And spent energy, what the heck is that? Well, spent energy involves your exercise, your physical activity. And it also involves an additional thing called your BMR, your basal metabolic rate. These two things are calculated together as energy expenditure. Well, the basal metabolic rate is a genetic rate in which, if I were to define it, it's basically at rest, all of the things my body needs to do, so body functions, to keep me alive. But it's at rest, right? So at rest, when you're not moving around a lot, you have many processes in your body: digestion, your cardiovascular system, cell transport, cellular energy, thinking about all these different things that have to happen to allow you to survive. We're building hormones, we're making digestive enzymes. All these things that have to happen at rest will contribute to expending energy. That we actually need energy to do these things, and that can be part of our energy spent. Now, it's very dependent upon your gender, what your body composition is like, your age, stress, food intake, and also genetics. Sometimes we're born with a certain basal metabolic rate. So when you think about all of this, you had to think about energy balance and body weight. So right here is the key thing. It's not as simple as this, but calories in, use a different color here, is your energy consumed. This is consumed energy, what I eat. What do I consume on a daily basis? What do I eat on a daily basis? That is energy in the form of calories in. Calories out is what I spent or expend, what I just wrote up above here. And for example, we can expend energy in two ways. We can expend it by exercise, and we can expend it by basal metabolic rate. So if what you eat is equal to what you expend, you maintain weight. You don't, so if your calories in is equal to your calories out, then you maintain weight, right? If what you eat is greater than what you expend, you would have a tendency to gain weight. How much? Depending on how much the difference is. And then if it was I ate less, but I expended more, then possibly, depending on the amount of difference, I might lose weight. Now, easier said than done, because weight loss and weight gain there's many different factors. But we do know that if you looked at caloric intake, that 3,500 calories is equal to 1 pound of fat. And physical activity does use calories. We eat calories. Physical activity uses calories, or we say burns calories for us. So, if we erase this again and look at over a 7-day period, let's just say, if 7 days, let's say you ate 500 excess calories. Okay? Each day you ate 500 excess calories, just to make it real simple. That's equal to 3,500, 5 times 700, 3,500 calories. Well, guess what? If I eat an excess of 500 calories per day, but I don't expend that, then my in is higher. I have 3,500 excess calories, and I don't match that with my expenditure. I didn't exercise those 3,500 excess calories. And so here I can gain a pound of fat within a week. And if you could imagine this happening over and over and over a course of several weeks to months, it's easy to see how quickly we can gain weight. Now, that same idea, if you can use the same kind of thing, if you then say, well, what if I was exercising, right, and I expended 500 calories? So this is exercise. What if I expended, whoops, what each day I did, and you can track even that choosemyplate.gov website can actually show you, how much would this activity burn? Remember, when we say use calories by physical activity, we could say, how many calories would I burn? You could use that same type of thing. And it can say, well, this activity would burn this many if you did it for this amount of time. Well, let's say you were able to burn an exercise, an excess of 500 calories per day. That each day you would burn 500 calories per day. So by the end of the week, you would have burned 3,500 calories, which really means you had lost weight. So what you ate was less than what you expended. And each week I could lose a pound of weight, which is good. A slow amount of weight loss is the best way to lose weight, obviously, as most of you probably know. And it's not the easiest thing to do in terms of that. Okay. So, one of the ways we can measure, and this has a bit of controversy to it, but one of the ways we can measure, your weight and how much adipose tissue or fat you are storing versus how much muscle you're storing is called the body mass index. There are various equations and places for you to calculate this on your own based on your height and based on your weight in pounds. Some are a little more sophisticated than others. If you take a nutrition class, you'll look at that, but there's many websites you can do this. Well, it tells us if, for example, if I weigh 100 pounds and I'm, 5 foot, then I'm in a healthy weight. But if I looked and went further down here, let's say I weighed 150 pounds and I was 5 foot. Well, then I'm considered overweight. Or if I weighed 225 pounds and I'm 5 foot, then I could be considered obese. Now, in terms of the area that you can see with the healthy weights and the areas with the overweights, the one controversy behind this is this is just here in red. Oops, I'm going way overboard here. Let me just do it this way. So you can see my healthy weight range here from here to here. And you can see, I'll do a different color, my overweight range from here to here, and then obese. So again, if you weighed 200 pounds and you were 5'6", you could be considered in the obese category. If you weighed 200 pounds and you were 6'2", you could be considered in the overweight category. Now, what's interesting about this is I could have, for example, a 6'2" person that weighed 200 pounds, but had a lot of muscle on them, and that's what was contributing to their weight. And this body mass index does not factor in. So not being underweight, but this whole chart does not factor in muscle mass and amount of adipose tissue. These are not factored in. And because of that, someone, like I said, could be 6'2" tall, be 200 pounds and be considered overweight, when in reality, maybe they have a lot more muscle that's contributing to that weight, and they're actually in a very healthy weight and less adipose. So it's use it with caution. It's a starting point, and then you could certainly see your doctor and maybe have some more special analysis done in terms of muscle mass and adipose tissue check to see, obviously if you fit that category, if you were 6'2" and 200 pounds and you were considered overweight, and then you had less muscle mass and more adipose tissue, then you truly might fit that category. And there's ways maybe we could just slightly bring you down. So you can see the ranges. So here's the numbers for body mass index. A healthy weight is somewhere, when we do this special calculation, somewhere between 18.5 and 25, which is a ratio or index between your weight in pounds and your height. If you're overweight, somewhere between 25 and 30 BMI, and 30 plus, again, the difference between the index between weight and height, obese or extremely obese. Now, I'm not sure if as I'm making this recording, we haven't had class yet. It's possible that I may be able to show you some videos in regards to surgery for severe obesity, and some ideas, behind that. But I'm going to, just in case I don't get a chance to cover it on Wednesday, talk about it now. Obviously, this nutrition chapter, what we're finishing with today, is a brief tour of thinking about nutrition and weight loss and weight maintenance and etc. And this is something that many of you probably have a lot of questions on. And so at least can give you some basics to think about, what things for yourself if you're trying to lose weight, or if you know someone that's severely obese, or moderately obese, or even just like I said, you're trying to lose weight, what kinds of things you'd be thinking about. Now, many of us, let me see if I have this here. No, I don't. So many of us, when you think about weight loss, minor to moderate weight loss, you would not be thinking about surgery for severe obesity. You'd think about dieting. How can I maybe reduce the excess calories in my diet, over a course of a week? Not completely restricting my food, but trying to do something that I can do for the rest of my life. That's a key thing. Because if it's a drastic weight loss diet, can I do that for the rest of my life? And we'll talk about maybe, what things can happen if I'm drastically doing things and how that can affect my basal metabolic rate or my metabolism. What kind of plan do I have in place for exercise, for activity? That's really important. And many people just try to do the dieting aspect and restricting calories, where you're, lowering the amount of calories that you're eating, but they don't take in an exercise plan. And remember, what you ingest has to be equal to what you expend. And so that exercise feature is really important. And then certainly in any weight loss regimen, minor to moderate weight loss, you want to consult your doctor for sure to make sure that you are doing things properly, and that you have a checkup to be sure that you're cleared to be able to exercise, and that maybe your doctor can help you with this process. Now, tried and true of being able to, we talked about with these calorie ideas, trying to either, burn 3,500 calories per week, or trying to maybe reduce each day. I reduce my calorie intake by 500 calories per day. Times 7, that means I could theoretically lose a pound of fat. But I've got to think about my physical activity. So it's got to be, both aspects. And that's where it can become difficult with time and things like that. Now, a lot of us see, and we could have a whole semester class on this, weight loss gimmicks, pills, and maybe, we've heard about low carb diets and, the gimmicks out there. You got to be careful of the gimmicks. If you can, and the big question that you need to ask yourself with gimmick diets that offer that the loss of weight can occur quickly. You should be wary of this, because you want to ask yourself the question, can I do this for the rest of my life? Forever, for my life. And is it safe? Many times these gimmicks, whether they're pills or things like that, it might not be safe. You should always check with your doctor to be sure. Many of us want to lose weight quickly, and that's a problem, because if you think about it, it takes and for some cases, it takes a while to gain weight. Unfortunately, we gain weight as we age. There's not a whole lot we can do about that. And we gain weight as we age because our basal metabolic rate drops. This drops. The amount of energy that my body needs to survive at rest, that drops. And so if I don't change my eating habits or my exercise habits, thinking about, remember, the in equals out. Part of my out is the BMR. Well, if that drops when I age, right, then I have to think about either doing two things. I have to expend more energy as I age with exercise. Oops. I got to exercise more. So I got to increase my exercise. If this is going to drop as I age, I've got to, increase my exercise as I age. Right? Or in a combination of both, I got to decrease the amount of food that I normally eat. Because many people say, wow, if I've gotten my 30s and 40s, I'm doing the same amount of exercise I normally do. I'm eating the same amount I normally do. And all of a sudden, I'm noticing this slight weight gain. And that's because your basal metabolic rate, the amount of energy you need to survive at rest, is starting to drop. Nothing you can do about that. And so then you're thinking about all these different options. Oh, what kind of diet can I do? What about these gimmicks diets? What about low carb diets? Well, when I reduce the amount of carbohydrates in my diet, it has been shown to definitely cause people to lose weight. But again, the key thing to ask yourself is, can you do this forever? And is it safe? And most people cannot stay on a low carb diet forever. And what they eventually do is go back to their normal diet once they've lost the weight. And not only do they see themselves gain weight quickly, but they gain more weight than they were ever at before. And one of the problems with some of these gimmicky diets is a phenomenon called a yo-yo diet, in which, you lose a bunch of weight, decrease weight loss at first, okay, but then you stop your diet. You resume your normal diet. So just to give you an example, maybe I was on a special, extremely low carbohydrate diet for, 6 months, and I dropped 40 pounds, and I was really excited. And then I was like, I can't eat this diet anymore. It's just not, I'm just hungry all the time. And I lost my weight. I'm going to go back to my normal diet, but I'll be good. I won't cheat. And then I go back to my normal diet, and I find myself kind of getting back into my normal routine. And then eventually I see myself gain weight, and I gain even more weight than what I previously had weighed. One thing these yo-yo diets are doing is they trick the body into thinking that it's starving, and it decreases your basal metabolic rate. Remember that rate at rest that my body needs calorie-wise to survive? And repeated yo-yo diets over and over again are decreasing that basal metabolic rate. So now that expenditure out, okay, you've got less BMR. If you go back to your normal diet, normal eating, well, it's very much easier to gain weight because your body is kind of in starvation mode. It's going, well, you know what, if you're going to restrict this food like this, I'm going to lower the metabolic needs that you need. And then when I start eating a normal diet again, I'm not, I'm eating more calories, and maybe I'm not even exercising as much as I did. Because of this lowers so much, my weight gain increases, and it's even more than I wanted it to be. I find myself even heavier than what I would have been when I started. So this can be troublesome in terms of that, and you got to be careful. The biggest bottom line is, ask yourself the question, can you do this for the rest of your life? You have to be able to think about that. And so you have to come up with a diet plan that you can eat for the rest of your life, theoretically, enjoy yourself, and to be able to survive, and not get into that method of yo-yo dieting, and an exercise plan for the rest of your life. That is going to be, moderate exercise that you can also do for the rest of your life. If you think about running a marathon or something, and the toll that it can take on your body, maybe that's not for you. Maybe it's going to be, walking every day, 7 days a week for an hour, or gently lifting weights, or doing yoga and walking, or having a combination of things that you could do for the rest of your life. Maybe parking your car a little farther away in the parking lot. These types of things. I can't be drastic. A slow and steady, you gain weight. Slow and steady, you lose weight. Now, if a person gets to a point where their body mass index is 40 or more, and they've been counseled, severe surgery for severely obese people, most individuals that perform severe obesity surgery have to have been counseled in a program that's a surgery center or doctor participates in, so they can realize what a life-altering decision they may be making, that it's just not a quick fix. The other thing to look at from this aspect is perhaps somebody that was severely obese has battled their whole life, has tried to lose weight. It's not like they wanted to be like this. Genetics could play a part in it. It's not like they're always forcefully eating food and not exercising. Perhaps there's limitations in terms of injuries, or they can't exercise because of the weight. And because of that, it may be difficult to lose the weight. They shouldn't be blamed. There are reasons for severe obesity surgery, for sure, but they should be treated. Individuals that have the surgery, just like you would break an arm or a leg, the first thing you would do is get a cast on it to help repair it. Well, if I was severely obese and I needed a surgery, if I've been through the counseling, if I've tried unsuccessfully multiple times to lose weight, and if I realize it's not a quick fix, it's a life-altering decision with many consequences, then this is my fix. And I should do that to survive. So hopefully if a person is considering this type of surgery, they're getting the proper counseling, and to realize that these are not easy surgeries. This is done in terms of everything else has not worked, and the person could be, in severe, health issues and possibly death if they did not get these surgeries. These are several different types of surgeries that you can see. They're called gastric surgeries. The typical gastric bypass, which I'll show you a picture here in a second, in which I'm literally bypassing part of my stomach and small intestine, is called the Roux-en-Y bypass, named after the doctor that developed it and how it looks. There's also something called the sleeve gastrectomy, in which I make my size of my stomach, I reduce the size of my stomach, usually through stapling. And I think I'll probably have time to show you some of these in class, so the visual of it I will, but at least you'll get a little bit more, based on it. Or at least a video of it so you could see it. Usually this is done through stapling. That's where the sleeve of staples creates a smaller stomach. So you eat less theoretically, and that helps you to lose weight quickly. And there's also gastric banding, which many of you have seen the lap band, which there's been some controversy of this lately. So let's just show you what some of these look like. So here's the Roux-en-Y bypass. Here's what's left of my stomach. I actually remove part of my stomach, almost the whole thing, which this is a pretty drastic surgery with a lot of side effects. And a doctor and the person would have to discuss whether this gastric bypass surgery would be the proper thing. So here's what's left of the stomach. It's then, notice it's stapled shut. So this would be your new stomach right here. You can imagine there's not very much food that you can actually put in that. So many people that have this Roux-en-Y surgery, they have to learn how to eat multiple meals per day and very teeny tiny meals. Otherwise, we're worried about vomiting and regurgitation in terms of that. Then, depending on the person and how they're going to do it, sometimes they will staple the other part of the stomach and they'll leave it in place. And this would be the ideal thing to do. While reversing the surgery is very complex, if need be, the surgery could be reversed, but it is very, very complex. So then what we do, notice, we've got our new little bit of stomach here. We've got our old stomach that's stapled shut. It's been disconnected from the esophagus that we learned about. Then I take part of my small intestine here and I bring it up to where the new stomach is. You can see right here, right here. I sew it in place so then when I eat my food, the food comes down the esophagus into my new stomach and then goes right into the small intestine. Now notice I've got another little thing happening over here. This is the end of my stomach and part of the other part of my small intestine. Well, some of the stomach juices and some of the small intestine juices initially, those are important. So we can actually then connect. So notice here, as the food's moving down here, I'm gonna, even though I don't have food in here, some of the digestive juices, especially in this part of the small intestine, are reconnected a little bit further downstream. I bypass a lot of, obviously, all the stomach, and I bypass many of my intestines. So basically what I'm doing is reducing the amount of food I can eat, and I'm reducing the amount of absorption that I can do within the small intestine. And the combination of these two causes great amounts of weight loss within a month, 2 months, 6 months. But there's also, also bad things that can happen in terms of malnutrition, malabsorption, losing weight too quickly. There are many different side effects from this, that it can be a very dangerous surgery, and something that while I lose a lot of weight, it might not be the best thing for me. It's very hard to reverse. The malnutrition, malabsorption issues can really wreck a person's life. But if done properly and maintained properly, a person can lose a significant amount of weight and survive, where they might not have if they didn't have the surgery. It's called the Roux-en-Y because you can see there's actually a Y segment here that we make with our gastric bypass. We bypass the stomach almost entirely, but we hook part of the small intestine that hooks up to your stomach. Remember, this is in class, we called this was part of the small intestine called the duodenum. And we re-hook that up to a place further downstream in the small intestine so that I can then have, as my food comes in, I'm still getting some of these digestive juices to help me digest. Not as well in terms of that. So this is a pretty major surgery. Many people vow to have a little bit minor surgery where I do the sleeve gastrectomy, which you can see I actually remove part of my stomach and staple it. So there's my sleeve part and my new stomach pouch, which I'm reducing the amount of food I can eat. But I'm not really affecting too much the absorption process in my small intestine. I'm not bypassing the small intestine here. You can see all the small intestine is present. I'm just reducing the amount of food I can eat, and that helps me to lose weight. This is a major surgery too. It does have its side effects. The lap band, which has had a lot of side effects in the past and isn't performed as much anymore, this would probably be considered the least invasive. What a person does with the lap band is, this is their esophagus, here's their stomach. You actually take a band and surgically put it around the stomach pouch, around the stomach, and create a small pouch for food. And so the person can't eat as much at a sitting, because if they do, they'll regurgitate. So they learn how to eat less. And over the course of weight loss, again, my stomach's still there. I'm not bypassing any of my small intestine. There's an access port on the outside that I can adjust the band. If the person seems to not be losing weight, I make it a little tighter. If the person seems to be losing a lot of weight, I make it looser. The thing with a lap band is it's not a lifelong thing. It'll eventually be removed. It is an aid to lose weight, but it's not lifelong. Eventually this could be removed, and then I have to, based on what I was taught, I have to learn to eat that same amount of food when I take the banding off. And that's where people can get themselves in trouble, because they can't do that. Whereas my sleeve gastrectomy, my Roux-en-Y, these are lifelong. They're tough to be obviously reversed, and these are lifelong things that you're left with in terms of that. Now, these are several disorders of the GI tract. We don't talk too much about them in our class, but if you're curious, you can read about them in chapter 14 in terms of some of the common ones that many of you might encounter in your daily lives, or in your travels in the future, and you can read about them in chapter 14. As well as some of the disorders of our accessory organs, which we talked about in class. We will talk about in class on Wednesday. We talked about the liver, the pancreas, and the gallbladder, and then the salivary glands. So here's a few. Hepatitis, which is an infection of the liver. There's 3 common types. Hepatitis A is transmitted by food and water. B is transmitted by bodily fluids and blood. And C is transmitted by infected blood. And when the liver gets infected, as we talked about, we'll talk about several of its functions that can create big problems in a person's body. Gallstones can form in a person's gallbladder, which, remember, as we'll talk about on Wednesday, the gallbladder stores bile for us. Bile, though, is actually made in the liver. And then on your own, you can check out some of the information regarding the eating disorders in the chapter. But I did want to go through a little bit of the end of chapter 14 that we would have covered in class this week, but didn't get a chance to because of Monday, missing Monday. And the previous half of chapter 14 we'll talk about this week in terms of the anatomy and physiology. Hope this helps, and see you in class next week, because you'll be watching this after Wednesday's class.